We are back and we are live at Baby Gorilla Comics right here in the beautiful Pendle, PA, 424 West Lincoln Highway. Let's go. Let's get it. And this day is very, very special for multiple reasons. One, because it's Free Comic Book Day.
Yep.
That's impressive all by itself. Two, it's not raining yet, so that's fantastic.
Yeah.
And then three, we have some fantastic GNT. Man, I need you to be with us everywhere we go, brother. I need your energy. All right. But we're not here alone with just GNT and all these comic books and all these wonderful people getting them. We're here with some special, fantastic guest that's here as well. One of them is this lovely lady at the very end that I'm sure she's going to keep her sunglasses on because she don't want me thinking how crazy and amazing that she is, but she is. We have Miss Erica Schultz in the building. Woo! Erica
I can
Schultz.
take my sunglasses off.
All right.
Thank you. First things first, thank you so much for spending a little bit of time with us right now so we can interview just a little bit. We was waiting for this day.
Why?
She said why? You are so humble. I've been talking to you already today, and you're just so humble. But really, all of us here at Geeks at the Nerd Table, we love all of this. So you may not feel that you're important or anything. Even having the slightest part to do with one of my favorite characters is important. Very important.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I just don't want anybody to think that this is, I don't know, like it's just, I write. That's it. I'm like Salinger. I just want to be in a cabin writing, cash the check, and then, go back to writing and insomnia and petting cats. And that's it.
You know what? That's fantastic, and I'm glad that you feel that way. But just so you know, you are one of the ones that actually allowed us to draw closer to these characters. Huh?
I'm one of the good ones.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes, because we've seen some bad ones. Jose definitely knows for sure. Where Jose at? Yeah, we know some, over there. We know some bad ones, but you're definitely one of the good ones. So, just in case for the folks that do not know about you or your work, would you like to at least introduce the things that you have done in the past?
So my name is Erica Schultz. I am a writer. I have written, currently writing for Spawn Rat City for Image Comics and Laura Kinney Wolverine for Marvel Comics and Daredevil Unleash Hell also for Marvel Comics.
Fantastic.
Did y'all hear that? Hold on. We're not going to dismiss this, right? No. We're not going to dismiss this. She said Spawn. She said X-Men. Well, she said Wolverine.
Yeah.
And what was the last one again?
Daredevil.
She said Daredevil that she's writing for. Okay, we're not going to dismiss that. Okay, Daredevil drew in a whole lot of folks within the last 10 years. Like a whole lot more, like I'm saying now, compared to the old Daredevil movie that came out a long time ago with Ben Affleck. That was trash, but we're not going to talk about that.
It wasn't that bad. If they only take out the playground scene, it would be much better. If they could just remove the playground scene.
I agree.
Absolutely.
Isn't that bad? Like the director's cut?
It's not that bad. And also, one of the things that they did in that film that they haven't touched on is Matt's addiction to painkillers.
Right.
Yeah.
Which I thought was really, really very interesting. That and it's like a blink and you miss it kind of thing. But he's opening all of these pill bottles and just taking a handful and crunching these pills. And at one point, he's in the shower and there's like blood dripping off of him, and he literally rips a tooth out of his own mouth.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's really interesting. The fact that they touched on that in that movie. I mean, yeah, I know having Colin Farrell's with the bullseye on his forehead was a little weird.
It was 2000-ish. It was okay.
Artistic choices.
It was,
Which one looked better, the Daredevil suit or the Hulk himself in the 2002 movie? 2004.
I mean,
Ben Affleck.
he was a big green baby. Let's be honest. He was a big green baby having a tantrum and destroying everything in his way, which is what big green babies do.
Exactly. So, first off, like I said, we want to thank you because Wolverine is extremely iconic character. Obviously, you know this. His favorite character, totally.
Jose's as well.
One of the reasons why we wanted to talk to you because we knew that you're writing for one of his favorite characters. That's one. And then everything else that goes along with everything that you. Hey, look, Mike. I know, Mike. You've been doing a whole lot of homework on Miss Erica, and I know you have tons of questions as well. So, Mike, I'm gonna turn this over to you. You literally have the mic, and ask Miss Erica what you wanted to ask her.
Wait, hold on. Before Mike goes, can I get one question in?
Oh.
Because I know Mike has tons of questions.
Can I get my sunglasses back on because it's really bright now?
Absolutely. Okay. Put them back on. Be the rock star that you are.
I know. I'm just making sure. I don't want to insult anybody by keeping my sunglasses off.
Oh, no.
Not at all. You're good. So my question for you is more of a grassroots thing. What is the thing that got you into writing comic books?
I always loved reading comics. I always loved telling stories. I would, my brother would come home from comics from the spinner rack, and I would always, take whatever he had. In terms of writing comics, I was working at a studio in New York City. I was doing some background inking work. I was doing some animation, and we were working on a book that wasn't the greatest book, but I figured, hey, if somebody's going to publish this, then maybe somebody would publish my stuff. So I paired up with one of the other artists, one of the figure artists in the studio, and we did a first book called M3, and we put it out ourselves, and we did 12 issues in about 3.5-4 years. We put out 2 trade paperbacks. We got it into Diamond, RIP, and we got it into comic shops. And as a writer, what you really have to do is you have to create a book because nobody's going to read your script. If you're an artist and you do sample pages, you find scripts online and you do sample pages, then a good editor can decide whether or not they're going to hire you within two page turns. Mm-hmm. And as a writer, you have to create a book, which is, frustrating, and because that's the way it is, but that is the way it is. Sorry. So we did that, and that sort of was my calling card. I did some anthology work with small publishers, and in 2014, I got a call from an editor at Marvel saying, "We'd really love for you to do something with Daredevil." So it was Matt. Correction, my apologies. I screwed up my timeline. That was 2018. 2014, I got a call from a publisher asking me, from Marvel, asking me to do the graphic novel prequel to one of the ABC shows, because Disney and ABC are the same company. No, it wasn't Heroes. Heroes was NBC. No, it was called Revenge. So we did the graphic novel adaptation of that, and I thought, okay, I'm totally into Marvel. I'm in. Marvel didn't call me again until 2018 when they asked me to work on Daredevil. And then they didn't call me after that. I did a one-shot for Daredevil for Matt and Misty Knight in 2018, and they didn't call me again until I reached out in 2021, and I learned that they were doing a Moon Knight anthology, and I love Moon Knight, and so I just started emailing everybody that I knew and said I'd really love to get on this. So there's no breaking in and staying in. It's, in the interim, I was working at the studio. I was doing books for Dynamite and Red 5 and other publishers, and still doing some of my own books, and doing Kickstarters for some of my own books. But yeah, it's kind of it's a rough life. I mean, when you're doing it full time as I am, but you just, if it's something that you love to do, you just keep your passion in it,
Now, I do have a question for you.
I thought Mike was going to have the questions, but okay.
Yeah, I'm pushing them back.
I'm paid by the hour. So.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So you write for some iconic characters, ones that have been around for a long time. How do you find your way to blend in what we all know, but still make it you?
I was telling Tori earlier. I mean, I make every story emotionally autobiographical. So I don't have steak knives coming out of my hands, and I'm not jumping through rooftops in my pajamas. But I, you know, I make sure that the characters have what I would consider like a physical arc, where they are moving from place A to B to C, and then they have an emotional arc, and it's the emotional arc that I try and infuse the characters with. I tend to have a lot of internal monologue simply because not everybody, I mean, Spider-Man is obviously going to, everything that's on his mind, it's going to come out of his mouth.
Right.
Um, but for characters like Laura, for characters like Elektra, for characters like Peter Cairn in Spawn Rat City, Peter actually does speak. He speaks what his thoughts 99.9% of the time, which I always find funny. But basically, I want these characters to feel real on an emotional level, because one of the things that you should strive to do as any creator is you want to create a connection with your audience, and the easiest way to create a connection with your audience is through your characters.
Mm.
I try and also have a combination. I know there are some stories that are very plot driven, and then there are other stories that are very character driven.
Mhm.
I sometimes find that the plot driven stories, the characters don't really do anything. And in the character driven stories, nothing really happens. So I try and find like a blend between the two. It's not just something happens and a character is reacting. It's a character will do something which will then trigger something. You know, a character has agency in the plot, has agency in what's happening and the circumstances that they find themselves in, whether it's through a mistake or through um, you know mistaken identity, you know, whatever. Maybe it's even MacGuffin. I mean, who knows?
Mm.
But depending on the story and depending on what the goal of the story is, because working for a company like Marvel, they do have certain things that they want to, you know, push. They have certain things, certain characters they want to push, certain situations they want to punch up for, you know, future things that are going to happen.
Mhm.
And you're not always aware of what's going to happen 16 months down the line. So you just sort of got to, you know, okay, I'll find a way to make it work. And then, you know, try and thread that needle.
Wow.
Mm.
Yeah, speaking of working with Marvel and kind of threading the needle on work, that's kind of seems like a broad collaborative effort, like gang war,
Gang war.
gang war. How do you? Is there like a almost like a writer's room where you guys talk about the overall story,
Cable on the mic.
where you start putting in? Oh, great! Oh, there we go.
There you go.
So for like a overall story that has a lot of crossovers in it, like the gang war. What is the process of doing that? Do you get together with all the other writers? Is there an overall story to begin with?
A lot of times what happens is the person who's more or less leading that story. So for Gang War, it was a Spider-Man led story, and then things sort of branched out from that. So Zeb Wells was writing Spider-Man at the time, and Ed McGuinness and John Romita Jr. were doing the art. And so what was happening was they sort of worked with editorial to get a framework of the basic plot points, and whether or not there were specific characters that were going to play a role in the Spider-Man book. And then we had like a big Zoom call that said, all right, well, you know, we have to do X, Y, and Z in Spider-Man. We would like to do ABC in this, and let's find a way to try and give everyone their own solid story, but also make sure that it will be seamless with everything else. Gang War, the within the story, it took place in 48 hours. That wasn't the case with obviously, because it went on for 4 months.
Yeah.
But in this story, it took place in 48 hours. For Venom War, it took place in 56 minutes. So for Black Widow Venom War, what we had to do was we sat down with Al Ewing and the editor Jordan White, and there were certain things that I had plotted out that were going to happen in my book, and then we said, oh no, Al's book's going to come out after your book, so that plot point we can't have in your book because it's going to be in Al's book that's going to come out the following week. And so it was a little more it was a smaller crossover, but it was a little more controlled, simply because we were dealing with 56 minutes. So yeah,
That's cool.
I also want to say the idea to bring Elektra almost like full circle and like have her become Daredevil is such a beautiful kind of new level for her. And
thank
like,
Marco Cicchetto and Chip Zdarsky.
yeah.
They were the ones that made Elektra Daredevil in 2019.
Okay.
Yeah.
With Spawn, Rat City. As a kid who grew up playing with Spawn figures, like the Todd McFarlane special, like we got, Spawn, we got Future Spawn. It just, the entire, from issue 1 feels like playing with McFarlane figures from like the early 90s. Like it has such a good plot in it that the designs feel, like I said, almost like the action figures we used to play with. The story, like pulling it back to like Spawn 301 with the necroplasm bomb and all that, was such a nice touch to see how that affects the entire almost multiverse universe, whatever you want to call it. Was such a nice plot. Where did that come from?
I mean, I try and put, I don't know if you want to call them social issues, but I try and talk about issues in my stories. I have a book called 12 Devils Dancing, and the character in that book is a veteran, and he's dealing with some issues. My father was a veteran, my grandfathers were veterans, so I wanted to talk about the idea of coming home from an unpopular conflict, and the idea of the guilt that you feel. There's a line in issue number 1 that's a narration line by Quinlan, the character Quinlan, who is a friend of Peter's. And it says, it's funny, the lies that we tell ourselves, the promises we'll make to ourselves that we know that we're never going to keep. When Peter says, I'm never going to kill again. And I wanted to show that whether we're 100 years in the future or 100 years in the past, people are damaged by war.
Yes.
Physically, emotionally, and everybody's going to find a different way to get through it. And it doesn't matter if you have nanotech in your body or you're dealing with a scar that people can't physically see. So I wanted to make sure that I talked about that. And when I was approached by Thomas Healy, who is the editor-in-chief at McFarlane Comics, we had talked about, working on something, whether it was She-Spawn or Scorched or whatever. And one of the reasons why Jay, Carlos, the line artist, and I wanted to go into the future was because we've never really stayed in the future in Spawn. So it gave us a lot of leeway. It allowed us to explore things that weren't already set in stone, that weren't already canon. So it gave us the ability to sort of bend the Spawn rules a little bit. And because Peter is alive, he's not technically a Spawn, he's known as the Deviant. We're allowed to sort of bend rules and sort of create new lore that doesn't contradict the canon, but sort of adds to it. In issue number 10 is when we really start to link up Rat City with the main Spawn timeline. When we talk about a character called the Curse, who was in the main Spawn timeline, we refer to that in issue number 10, and you see a link from a character from here that is then has a link to the curse from the past. So people usually say like, well, I haven't read Spawn in 30 years. Well, it's okay. You can pick up on Rat City, and there's just going to be these tiny little Easter eggs. But once you get toward issue 10, then we're getting folding a little bit more into it.
Nice.
And it allows you to sort of start from the beginning on this whole new adventure.
Yeah, there was one of the things I really like. I think it was issue 5 or 6 where they had kind of the flashback of Spawn in the alley and he's going after Overkill. I thought was really cool, and also I like that it's more of a it's not so much a spiritual journey or linked to that. It's more of the I guess you want to call it cyberpunk, but linking it back to like the overall Spawn, heaven and hell mythos is really cool. Really enjoying it. Didn't get quite to issue 10 yet, but I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, we're starting the 3rd arc now. Issue 13 came out last month. Issue 14 is coming out this month. And we're leaning into a little more of the spiritual for this. But, the first 12 issues are mostly the journey of more of a physical journey for Peter. And it's not linked to heaven or hell. There's no like religious aspect to it or whatever. I mean, they make a joke that Peter has Catholic guilt, but there's no like real religious aspect like there is in the Spawn books. But slowly and surely we're starting to fold in more of original Spawn canon. And now that we've built the foundation for Peter, we can now sort of say, okay, how is it going to how can we then complement the original canon with these new characters and this new plot points that we put out.
That's awesome. Okay,
that's rad.
One more, Mike, because
more?
The reason why is because we want to be obedient to her time frame, because I know she has to leave in a little bit.
I said, my friend who I'm supposed to hang out with, I don't know if she's hanging out with me today. So I said I have a little extra time, but Tori Hill and Anthony, I don't want to. I know everybody was mispronouncing your name, so I'm not going to try and mispronounce your name.
If anything, I do have one final question. As a general comic book question.
Okay.
Out of the 3 of these, who should have stayed dead on the page? Jason Todd, Elektra, or Bucky Barnes? They've all kind of Elektra kind of came back right away, but
I'm giving it some thought. I would say Jason Todd, just because out of the 3, I mean, well, there's been more Robins since then. But I always thought that, Dick was the boldest. Jason was the brashest. Damien's the bastard. And real. Tim was the brightest.
Yes.
I mean, you can get into Carrie and Stephanie and, more of, sort of more multiversal, characters in terms of who technically is Robin, whatever. But I think the one thing that sort of taints the whole thing with Jason Todd is the fact that they turned it into a telethon. No, they literally did. There was a phone number in the back of the book, and it
Danny
said,
O'Neill talks about
call this number if you want him to die. Call this number if you want him to live.
Yeah.
And I understand. It was a huge publicity, and it sold really well. And I get it from a marketing and capitalistic perspective. Mm-hmm. From a creator perspective, though, it always kind of frustrated me because I felt like as the creators, you don't want to put too much in the hands of everybody else, simply because, if that happened now, it would have been an absolute total tornado of a mistake. Because think about like what happens on social media all the time. Like fans want to do X, Y, and Z, and they more or less will bully creators into doing something or bully companies into doing something, as opposed to just letting things be and then living with it and then moving on. So I think that if the Jason Todd thing happened now and it was like a Twitter poll or Instagram poll or something like that, it would have been pandemonium.
Yeah,
I'm on the same
Yeah.
page as you are as a
absolutely.
lifelong Batman fan. Having Jason, stay dead was probably the best idea. It kind of takes away from Batman's biggest loss and mistake. And
I mean, well, that's the thing is like, nobody's ever dead in comics, blah, blah, blah. And I get that. But at the same time, it's like sometimes you need that death to happen. I was earlier this morning before I came out here, I was watching an interview with Florence Pugh about the new Thunderbolts film.
Mhm.
And I haven't seen it yet, but I plan on I'm not going to see it opening weekend. I don't want to be in a crowded theater like that.
Just so you know, just put a pin on that. We went to the theater on Thursday night, 3D. Expected a crowd. We were the only ones in there.
I want to go on like a Tuesday, like at like 10:30 in the morning on
Get
a
that
Tuesday,
matinee?
Oh,
and pay a little pay a little less,
That's
and
true.
usually have most of the theater to yourself. Also because like I just don't want to be around like coughing people. I've had COVID 3 times. I don't want it a fourth.
Me too.
So I mean,
Sorry.
one of the things that she had said in the interview, which I thought was really interesting, was that she was talking about how when she first read the Thunderbolt script, there was no mention of Natasha in there, and how she feels that the character is so genuinely rooted and her in the relationship with Natasha and Natasha's death.
Mhm.
And so as the actor and the person who was physically embodying this character and emotionally embodying this character, she said, we have to do something about Natasha being in it. It has to have something there simply because, Natasha dying is, a huge deal for her. And it's not something that she can just throw away. So
Yeah.
I think when Jason came back, and I know it was the whole thing where like, Talia and Raish wanted to make, all that other thing, Lazarus Pits, whatever. When Jason came back, it kind of cheapened what happened. And I think that one of the things that Bruce gets away with in everything, I mean, he's a white dude and he's just exorbitantly rich.
Mhm.
So he's untouchable in multiple, in multiple categories. He's untouchable. So having to face and be forced to face this and let that sit with him for the rest of his life, I think that's poetic justice. I mean, it's sad that a kid had to die, but it's also poetic justice that, hey, yeah, you're untouchable. You're the billionaire playboy, whatever, but your actions have collateral damage.
Yeah.
And it's not just a random person who, gets hurt because you're fighting fill in the blank. It's someone who you cared about, someone who was like a son to you, or at least someone that you cared enough about to train to bring into the fold. So I really kind of wish that they left Jason dead, because I think that would make Bruce second guess a lot of things, and it would give him a moment of pause, and he would still be impulsive and he would still be, spontaneous with certain things, but it would give him a moment of pause because he'd have to remember, wow, I ran in, not thinking, and look what happened.
Yeah.
And that's not something I can ever erase.
Right.
But I mean, it's comics, so that's how it rolls.
All right. So I have, sorry, Mike. One last question. And it primarily deals with the young lady that's been kind of walking back and forth, my daughter. So I don't know where she's at right now. Just follow the pink hair bouncing and you'll see her. But if you was to give any words to that young lady that may be interested in doing what you're doing, any words of advice, or just what kind of drove you to be the individual that you are and still maintain who you are in the midst of everything that you're doing in the field that can be considered, I'm going to do the quote unquote male dominant?
I mean, I'm brutally honest to the point where a lot of people want me to shut up, but I'll say this is not for the faint of heart. And I don't say that be like, oh, look at me, how tough I am. No, I say that because there are a lot of people that I've known throughout the years in this business who are very good at what they do. They're very good writers, they're very good artists, but you are going to get knocked down. We were talking about Jason Todd. You're going to get beaten with a crowbar over and over and over again. You know, my first job with Marvel in 2014, I was like, yes, I got this. And then I don't hear from them for 4 years.
Right.
And then it's just a one shot. And then I have to seek them out, you know, hat in hand and beg for a job. And luckily I did well enough in that doing that Moon Knight short that they said, hey, she did this. She did it on time, on budget. She wrote a good story. Let's give her something else. And I've been very, very lucky that I've been able to get more work. But that by no means is a guarantee. And so, what I would say, I mean, I'm going to give practical advice. I would say keep a day job. I would say to marry rich. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, but like, but I'm being serious. I mean, the idea that this could be taken away at any moment.
Wow.
It is precarious. It is stressful. It is anxiety inducing. Seek therapy. Find people that are not in the business. So when you inevitably crack, which you will, you can talk to somebody who doesn't have skin in the game. Also, find people who are in the business. One of the things that a very big mistake that I made early in my career is there were a lot of other writers that I was hanging out with and everything. And instead of, and I admit this, I've lost some friendships because of my own inappropriate attitude. And I was looking at these other people as competition instead of colleagues. We all have a different voice. We all are going to bring something to the table. And instead of looking at these other people in the same position as I am and trying to build them up and trying to help each other, I was very sort of me focused. And I lost a very good friend because of that. I mean, obviously there were other issues, but that was one of the things that I take responsibility for. It was my attitude on that. So have people that aren't in the business, that are just sort of there to sort of cheer you on, but also realize that you need people that are going to be honest with you. You don't want somebody, you don't want to have, you know, go up with a script or with a comic and be like, my mom loves this book. Your mom's going to love that book because your mom loves you.
Right.
You want someone to be objective. And I do some editing on the side, and sometimes I've noticed that there are people who do not want edits, they want endorsements.
Okay.
You know, they don't want me to tell them that this is how you can make this story better. They want to be able to say, oh, Erica Schultz said that this story was great, and Erica Schultz read it and thought it was great. Not that my name means a good goddamn of anything, but be honest with yourself, be honest with your abilities. I am by no means the best writer out there. I am by no means the worst writer out there. I am a working writer. And, you know, I mean, think of it in terms of acting. There are the people that are the stars, and then there are people that are working actors. You know, they're paying their bills.
Yeah.
And you turn on Law and Order and you point and you go, oh, hey, so-and-so. You know what I mean? I think that you have to be honest. You have to be honest on why you're doing it. I write and I create because I have to. It is a physical and emotional compulsion for me.
Wow.
And if I'm not doing it, I'm miserable. And
Yeah.
I cannot sit still. Like I can't literally sit on the couch and do nothing. Like last night I was sitting on the couch trying to do nothing, and I said, you know what? That jacket that Shannon gave me that had all the stains on it, I bet I could use that jacket if I just put some random embroidery over all the stains. Let me run upstairs and get that jacket and start sketching out things that I'm going to do, and then just start embroidering it while watching Andor.
Rad.
because I can't. So there are plenty of issues with that in and of itself. I cannot sit still. This entire time I've been leaning forward, rocking this chair.
Me too.
So there are issues with it, in general. But if you are writing comics because you really want to be a film writer, or you really want to be a TV writer, and you figure that if you just make a comic, it'll be the easiest thing to get your film or television show greenlit, don't write comics. Write comics for the sake of writing comics. Write comics because you want to write comics. This is a very unique medium. This is not a storyboard. And I know this because I used to work on storyboards, and it is very different. It's a unique medium. It's not a storyboard. It's not a stepping stone. If you write like I'm writing a bunch of comics, and if somebody says, oh, hey, it's happened, I want you to write this film. I did. Nothing happened to it, but, I was able to write a film. But at the same time, you have to be in this for comics, and you have to be in this for yourself. And you have to find people that are going to support you emotionally, physically sometimes, because I've literally passed out at shows, financially, unfortunately. If you are in this because you want to be famous, if you're in this because you want to be a millionaire, this is the wrong business to be in.
Mm-hmm.
Like the contracts for making a lot of money, there was like a 7 to 8 year gap in Marvel where you could make a good amount of money. Like you look at the people who created Deadpool and things like that. Yeah, they get a piece of that, and that's great. But the likelihood of that happening to you, I don't care if you've worked on this book since you were 7 years old. The likelihood of that happening to you is very, very, very slim. And you need to acknowledge that, and you need to be honest with yourself about that. And if you can't be honest with yourself about that and still keep doing it, then get a day job, become an accountant, become a plumber, whatever, and do it for fun on the side. If this is a compulsion, and dare I say an addiction, then keep doing it. And it's still no guarantee. There are absolutely no guarantees for anything.
Please.
So that's the problem is the what is the phrase I'm looking for? You need to manage your expectations.
Okay.
And you go to a convention and you watch and you're looking at a panel and you're hearing about, oh, they just made this TV show, or they just made, Invincible or Walking Dead, or, Deadly Class, Umbrella Academy, fill in the blank. That is the exception, the rule. And you need to be honest with yourself. And I know that that's really, really tough, especially for something that you feel so passionate about. Another thing, I have way too much advice. Another thing is that when you become a professional at this, the ability to be a fan of certain things, it's very difficult. My husband is in film and television, and we are two of the most annoying people to ever watch a TV show or a film with, because he will literally pick it apart in terms of the technical aspects. Oh, they shouldn't have cut there, or they stayed too long on that frame, or the lighting was really off on that. And I'll think about it in terms of the narrative aspects, in terms of the character development, etc. And you are constantly, or at least I am constantly, reverse engineering things to the point where it's difficult to just sit down and enjoy something.
Yeah.
And that's difficult because that's what a lot of people want. They want to read a comic, they want to watch a TV show, do whatever, and just enjoy it, just check out. I will say I was able to just check out which was surprising because I very rarely am. Bullet Train. I don't know if you've seen that film.
It's on the list.
It is.
Oh yeah.
It is really, really good. It's not just a film that you're just like, okay, leave your brain at the door. It's a good film, and it is very, very fast paced. And because of that, it doesn't allow you to fall into a lull.
Uh-huh.
And there's a phenomenal show on HBO Max, or sorry, just Max. It's not HBO Max anymore.
Yes.
My apologies, Zaslav or whatever your name is. There's a show called The Pit.
Oh yeah. Uh-huh.
Unbelievable.
Really?
Unbelievable.
Darn it. She just added something else I need to go ahead and watch now.
My whole thing is
Stay.
if I don't ever want to be able to predict what happens, whether it's a line, it's a character, or whatever. So at the end of the episode, I'll turn to my husband and be like, "Oh, how much you want to bet? Blah 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 happens." And the next episode of The Pit, that didn't happen. And I'm like, whoa. It's and I say older show. It's maybe 3 years old,
Right.
but The Good Place is another one.
Awesome.
Another great show. So if you're not going to get it because, and I figured out why, especially with The Pit, is because I was looking at everything from a plot-driven standpoint as opposed to a character-driven standpoint. Because you think about it, they're in an emergency room. There's all
Right.
this stuff happening, and they have to react to it. So I'm like, oh, how much you want to bet? Blah blah blah. How much you want to bet? Blah blah blah.
Right.
And then you learn that that's actually not the case because it's the characters that they're building up slowly, almost to the point where you're not really noticing how much you are understanding them and realizing who these people are. And then that's the character twist that is then going to take the plot and everything into another direction.
Nice. Didn't think about that. Wow. Okay, now something else I have to watch. And you know what? Something else that we all have to watch? We got to look out for every single thing that this young lady is putting
I'm
out
not that
there.
young, but thank you.
You're very welcome. That because compared to the rest of the crew, I'm the baby. Anyway, Ms. Erica Schultz, we appreciate you being
Thank
here
you
with
so
us.
much.
Thank you for giving us a number of your time. Thank you for everybody that's sitting here and actually listen to this young lady here.
Don't listen to me.
This lady. Listen to her. Absolutely.
Absolutely listen to you. We just sat here. We wanted to interview on your comics. We got snippets on TV shows and movies and entire industry. So you have a lot to share, and don't take that for granted.
Hi. Take that, Ms. Erica. All right, so
I know when
What's
I'm beat.
so once again, thank you so much for being here with us and having just a number of minutes with us. We really appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very, very
Thank
much.
you.
We love it.
Everybody,
Thank
Ms.
you.
Erica Schultz. Erica Schultz. You're awesome, lady. You're awesome.